Welcome to today's webinar, Introducing Simflofy version 3. My name's Dave Jones, and it's my absolute pleasure to host today's session that will not only explore what exciting new features you can find in Simflofy v3, but will also provide insight into both the Simflofy story so far and a sneak peek at the future of the Simflofy roadmap. We've got a packed agenda for the next 40 minutes or so, but before we get going, of course, just some quick housekeeping items for you. So firstly, for those of you that are listening live today, the session is being recorded and you'll get an email with a link to that recording automatically sent to you in the next day or so. We're also hosting a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, which is a great opportunity for you all to ask your Simflofy related questions to our speakers today. To do that, simply enter those questions by clicking on the floating question button that should be in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We'll do our best to get through as many of those questions as we can do in that session, and any that we can't answer live, we will of course respond to by email. That chat window is also the best place to let us know if you're having any technical issues, and again, we'll do our very best to answer those as quickly as we can. So, with the housekeeping done, let's get things moving. And firstly, today I'd like to introduce our speakers for the day. You've already met myself. As I mentioned, my name's Dave Jones, and I've spent over 20 years in the information management industry. Over that time, I've had the pleasure of working for the likes of Highland, Nuxio, AIM, and Konica Minolta. I'm now CEO of Instinctive Solutions, who are a marketing consultancy specializing in helping emerging software vendors in this space. And lastly, I also have the honor of being the current chairman of the board of directors for the Association for Intelligent Information Management, also known as AIM. And my simple job today is to introduce you to our illustrious set of speakers. So first in line is Mark Lugert. Mark's CEO of Simflofy, and he has over 25 years worth of experience in enterprise software development, software architecture, systems architecture, and enterprise architecture. Mark spent 8 years as director of global consulting and America's support with Alfresco. And since forming Simflofy in 2012, Mark has helped hundreds of companies implement enterprise content management. Following Mark in today's presentation is Tara Coombs. Tara is a leading records management consultant who has previously worked in the enterprise content management space for government and corporate organizations, as well as more recently for Alfresco. Tara has served as a records management consultant at the Department of Justice, and she helped the Joint Chief of Staff implement one of the first electronic records management systems in the US government. And last, but by no means least, is Stanley Arnold, CTO at Simflofy. Stanley is a developer by trade, having spent more than 15 years building content management solutions. Stanley's professional passion lies in learning about new technologies and working with partners and customers on new cutting-edge solutions to some of our oldest problems. In his free time, though, Stanley enjoys running and spending time with his family. So that's our speaker list for today. Let's have a look at what we're actually going to be talking about. So in a few seconds time, I'm going to hand over to Mark, who's going to take us on a trip down memory lane for a few minutes. He's going to look at where Simflofy has come from and how as a company they've arrived to where they are today. Mark will then hand over to Tara, who dives into version 3 itself, walking us through some of the new features and demonstrating those in action. And then finally, Stanley's ready to take a little bit of a view into the future and look at what even more exciting features are planned in the Simflofy roadmap before we then all come back together for that Q&A session at the end of the presentations. And don't forget, use that chat window to ask as many questions as you like throughout the session, and we'll answer as many of those as we can do during that section at the end. That's a lot to cover in 40 minutes, as I said. So without further ado, let me hand over to Mark to take a look back in time. Mark, all yours.
Okay, so my name's Mark Lugert. I'm here to talk about, the evolution of Simplify, how we were founded, and what's led us to today. So this is our version one of Simplify. This came out in 2013. When we started Simplify, the vision was that we wanted to be middleware for, unstructured data, so documents. And because we came from places like JBoss and stuff like that. And one thing that we realized was that we weren't sure where the E in ECM was, the enterprise, content management. The problem was that there was a survey done, and the average enterprise had five of those, five document management systems or ECM systems. And our opinion was you shouldn't have to migrate everything into one repo to have a single repo. So we came up with this concept called federation, and that was our first version of Simplify. Was a federation platform that gave you a search interface and then allowed you to do all your ECM functionality, updating documents, updating, metadata, stuff like that, all from one user interface or one API. And we were lucky to start with some really big names for customers. So McKesson was our first customer, and then we went to RHI and PMI, which is the Project Management Institute. But after learning, a lot of stuff from those initial bleeding edge customers, we realized that the one thing we were missing was the ability to do high speed indexing and migration, because not everybody wants federation for every single platform, right? Because what we realized is it's not just about ECMs and document management. There's HR management, there's file systems, there's email, there's lots of places where content exists that have nothing to do with document management, right? But that doesn't mean you don't want control of these things. That doesn't mean you don't want to manage these things. It just means that the source of those systems, things like Salesforce, right, SaaS, or cloud drives, these things exist by themselves without that kind of management. So you migrate, but then you move off your business process. So that's what federation was for. But what we really wanted to do was, some people wanted to get off of legacy stuff. So we're like, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, we couldn't find anything to do that, right? So we couldn't find anything that could do that at scale, right? I mean, we could find things that could do like 5 million documents, but we were working with like banks and like McKesson is the largest healthcare provider on the planet, right? So we're dealing with people that have billions and billions of documents, in some cases tens of billions. So we needed to have a very high speed pipeline to be able to migrate or index documents for search at the scale of billions, not at the scale of low millions. And so 2.0 of Simplify was really about building that engine and the processing pipeline and all the things you need to intelligently process documents so that you can migrate them, um, and not only migrate them just to migrate them, but migrate them and add value to that, right? So add things like classifying those documents, and master data management around cleaning up metadata, extracting metadata from documents, stuff like that, right? So we wanted to be able to intelligently be able to perform these migrations and indexing, which would add more value to federation, but also add more value to our customers who wanted to get off these legacy platforms and not have to pay for those and not have to support those. So it's a cost savings for them, which also helped paid for federation. So this leads us up to version 3.0 of Simplify. Uh, we have a bunch of partners who OEM Simplify and use Simplify under the covers. And this basically takes advantage of the federation platform. Here's a quote from this. But the reality is we've been supporting records management, document management through our federation platform with our partners for a long time now. Version 3 really leads us into being able to perform some of these things through our API, things that we've supported for a long time. This is really exposing these things and improving the platform to support our roadmap. So the first thing that the first major feature that will be coming out this year with version 3 is records and retention management. So we've been doing this for several years now with our other partners. Now this is actually exposing this into our user interface so that customers can do this in a federated way. via Simflofy. So we do have our own repository if you wanted to use that. But the key here is that you can now manage stuff in place wherever it lives via our federation technology directly from Simflofy, our user interface, or our REST API. And this includes our repo. This includes our partners' repos, and this includes any of the other things that we connect to with our 55 out-of-the-box connectors. The second feature is e-discovery. So this is really around the collections process on the e-discovery side, where we want to help people collect data for their legal needs or FOIA requests across all their different systems. So we're uniquely qualified to do this because Federation, the way Federation works, when you'll see the demo with Tara in a few minutes, it basically allows you to seamlessly manage stuff in other systems without actually having to know what those other systems are or where that content lives. From your perspective, it looks like it just lives in one repository, the Simflofy virtual repository. Okay, and so we're uniquely qualified to do e-discovery collections, which is the most expensive and most difficult part of the e-discovery process. There's lots of tools that do the processing side. There's nobody really that, as far as we know, that does the collection side in such a as easy as we do it, at the scale that we do it, at the price that we do it, and with all the connectors that we have. So again, some people do it with a few connectors like email and stuff, but again, we have 55 out-of-the-box connectors for this, and people can build their own, and they can use our partners to build their own. Okay. The next thing we've done is we've enhanced the user experience. So we've given some, our target audience is really business analysts, not developers. So we want business analysts to be able to use the product to do migrations, to do federation, to do e-discovery or records and retention management or document management, right? So we want those users to be able to set this up, use the system, and manage the system without really having to bring on developers unless they have really, really specialized processing needs. So in that vein, we wanted to improve our user experience with wizards and embedded documentation, stuff like that, so that we can better enable business analysts to be able to do their job without having to take a ton of training and be trained in development, stuff like that. And then we have enhanced administration capabilities. This includes more security type stuff, so audit reports and stuff like that. And then ability to get access to logs and read logs and download logs and manage logs and manage users, manage user access, all that kind of stuff has been improved in the user interface. Okay, so that's the quick highlights of version 1, 2, and 3 of Simflofy and kind of where we're at today. I'm going to hand this over to Tara Combs, who's going to walk you through a demo of the new records and retention management stuff with probably some e-discovery, and then we'll talk about the future.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to talk about the new features in our latest version, first starting with records and retention management. So we're providing integrated records and retention management. This allows you to easily mark documents as record and perform record actions using either metadata or status fields. So meaning that we allow you to create custom metadata such as employee separation date or contract expiration date or events in the system like contract completed or contract expired or employee separated from the organization. The difference between records management and retention management is typically records management allows the organization to lock down the final version of a piece of content, or in some instances, every version created of that document will be a record, allowing the document to still be editable as of the latest version, but all previous versions are official records, meaning they're locked and they can't be changed. Retention management allows you to apply a retention schedule. Let's say we have a 3-year retention schedule, and you can apply it against content. That content is still editable and changeable, but if it hasn't been modified in 3 years, then we identify it as ready to be deleted out of the system. But it's never officially locked down. It's always going to be a living, breathing document. So you're able to create a centralized retention schedule repository that can automate and control content and records across your organization. So That means across SharePoint, across Box, file shares, OpenText, Documentum, FileNet, etc. Then we can apply the disposition actions to those records across the repository. So typically either a destroy action or a transfer. And if it's a destroy, we'll go to that repository and we'll delete it out of there. If it's a transfer, we'll pull a copy of it and we'll create a transfer package that then can be sent to an archive. And then of course, cross repository. So all our records management actions can be performed across those multiple repositories. So everything from applying a retention schedule or declaring a record to applying a hold or removing a hold or a final destruction action. Our first demonstration of the day is going to be our records management demo. So we're providing federated records management capability, meaning that those documents can exist in other repositories and our records management system can take action on them. So we can add a retention schedule because we're doing both retention management and records management. We can declare a record. We can place an item on hold. We can disposition that item, whether it's a destroy or transfer. With that, let's go ahead and go into the demonstration. So what I've done is just created a search that shows me all the results in the systems that I'm managing. So we have, 42 items in Box, 108 on our file server, 63 emails, and 46 documents stored in SharePoint. And just to show you that those numbers are accurate, I have my Box window up here and I'm just going to refresh and you can see that it has 42 files for my invoices folder that I am indexing. So the first thing we're going to do is do a search to narrow down our search results because we have 259. So I only want to find documents with the word military in them. Now you'll notice that it narrowed it down to just Box and SharePoint, and we have 15 in Box and 11 in SharePoint. We also have hit highlighting here in the summary of what that document is. And we can do things like take document actions on that, or we can go ahead and do our records management. So I'm going to declare as a record. And I'm going to say this is a transitory record because I want to show you that the destruction is actually happening. So we're going to save this. So you'll notice that the icon gets updated and shows me that this has a retention schedule as well as being declared a record. Now, we also have the option to bulk action these. So I can come and select individual documents, or I can do a select all here, and I can do a bulk action where I'm declaring these as a record as well. So again, we'll just click our save button, and we'll see in just a few seconds that our icons have appeared on these. We're going to flip over to the records management view now and show you what that looks like. So we can actually see the file plans here. And if we do a refresh, we'll actually see that under transitory record, we can see those 5 documents that we just declared as a record. But we can also see these in the records management list. We have the ability to filter by various things. So our retention schedules, which repository that we're looking at, if it's eligible to be cut off, transferred, or destroyed. We can look at things that have already been destroyed where we're keeping the metadata. We can do an eligibility date search where we can pick our action and we can select a schedule and a start and end date, and then we can search and see what's eligible during that date range as well. But what we're going to do is just search by our transitory records. And once I click my search, I can see that there are my 5 documents. Now, if we look at our actions and we go to our details screen, we can see everything that has happened to this record. So it was declared, it was filed under transitory record, and it was cut off at this time, and it is eligible now to be destroyed. So I do have the ability to go ahead and destroy this. And we can see that it disappeared from our screen. And if we go to Box and we refresh, we'll see that our invoices now have been updated to 41 files. So the records management also allows me to see the content breakdown. So right now, we only have 5 documents declared as a record. You can export this as CSV as well. And we're going to go to the retention schedules just to show you a brief bit about that. So we have our employee personnel records. We're actually using custom metadata and custom events in this retention schedule. And if I expand it, we can see that we're going to cut off on the event of employee separation, which is going to populate this employee separation date. And then 7 years after the employee separation date, we're going to destroy it. Now, the nice thing about our system is if you select this complete step automatically, that cutoff will occur automatically and the destruction would occur automatically. Otherwise, you can go back to the records management dashboard view and you can search by retention schedule or all retention schedules and that eligibility date range to get a list of what would be eligible for destruction during that period of time. We also can create our custom options. So again, here's your custom metadata. It can be a date field, a text field, or a number. Our custom events. We have the ability to have holds, which we're going to talk about a little later, and transfer destinations if that is our disposition. And last but not least are our record audits. So we have the ability to search on record action, record ID, the time of the audit, so a date range of what occurred, or a user performing that action. But we're going to actually choose just destroy here. And we're going to say just show us the last 100 rows of this. So we can see that the item, the record ID, the action that was taken on it, the audit time, the description of what occurred, the user that performed it, and the organization. We have the ability to export this information and make it a record. Once we've exported it, we can clear it from the history, we can give it a name, and you have the option to export as CSV and PDF. So that's just a brief synopsis or demonstration of our records management capability today. So now I'm going to talk about the e-discovery capability that we've added to our products. So if you know about the electronic data reference model, commonly called EDRM, we fulfill the first component of that. So being able to identify content that meets your e-discovery request, being able to create a collection of that content that can be shared and called as needed, apply holds to that content so that it can be preserved. And then we have the ability to export those collections in the EDRM XML format so it can be imported into other e-discovery or review processing tools. So now we're going to go ahead and do our e-discovery demo. So we're going to pick up where we left off, which is we've executed our search on the full text term military. You can see that we found 14 in Box and 9 in SharePoint. So Simflofy provides the first part of the capabilities in the electronic discovery reference model, shortly known as EDRM. And we allow you to identify, collect, and preserve that content. We also have the ability to do a metadata export on that collection and export it in the EDRM XML format. So that can be taken into a review or processing tool. But for today, we're going to focus on just our SharePoint records. And what we really want to see is just the records. So we're going to toggle down to just these 4 records. And now we're going to create a new view. And we're going to call this view the Audit Discovery View. And we're going to give it a short name, and that short name will be used in the URL when we create this new view. So it can be shared with other people for review or sent out externally if they do have access to your system. So if I click done and now I refresh, I can also click that link directly from there, but I can go to my views. And we can see just those 4 documents. Again, if we toggle our pane, there's our SharePoint connector ID with those 4 documents. So I can individually add these to a hold. And we're going to say it's an audit hold. And by the way, they can be on multiple holds. Or I can bulk action. And I can add to a hold for the rest of these documents. So now when I save, that you can see that there's a lock that's been applied to these documents, and that indicates that they are on hold. Now if we go to our records management dashboard, we're going to do a search, and we're going to search for everything that is on the audit hold. So now if I do a search and I go to my record list, I can see those 4 documents. Again, I can bulk action here to do things like remove from hold, do an administrative delete, except it's on hold so it can't be deleted. But if we look at the details again for this particular document, we can see that It's on hold, so it won't be able to be destroyed. And I can remove the hold from here. And now if I execute my search again, we can see that that's been actioned. And again, I can select all, and I can remove things from hold in a bulk action as well. So we'll remove those. And again, when I refresh or use my search, those are gone from the view. The last thing I wanted to show you is that when we do an export on that EDRM XML format, we can download that document. And when I go to Finder and I can open it with my text edit, this is the format where it can be populated into, again, a review or processing tool. Another area is our user experience. So we've done a lot with our T-Search UI. We've streamlined the search experience across multiple repositories. You can now drag and drop to upload documents and records as opposed to having to use the upload button. And again, you're able to have improved e-discovery because you can view past e-discovery versions and searchable reports. So reporting is a big component of all of this as well. Our last area of improvement is the administration capabilities. So we have added more controls around security. We have everything from search connector configuration, widget-based security so that you can identify which users can see which widgets. And you can also do authentication based on the Simflofy admin credentials. We've also streamlined the creation process for these jobs. So we've merged the repository and the output connectors. You can modify the connector directly in the job. We've redesigned the menus for more user-friendly navigation. All of the mappings for metadata can now be edited inline, and job mappings and job mapping groups can be viewed via an external source. We've also enhanced our post-processor support, so things that happen after the documents are in the system. So everything from maybe adding a records management or declaring it a record. You can also separate thread pools so you can manage threads for improved performance. And even after a document's been written, you can have post-processing tasks performed on it. We've also increased our capabilities around reporting. So we've done some really in-depth improvements to the reporting pages. The job mapping audit reports are now available as separate reports. For configuration, you only need authentication connectors for authentication related configurations. Otherwise, they can be managed directly in the job. We've also created the wizard capability that will step a new user through how to create those connectors. So it'll walk them through step by step how to do that till they get sufficiently comfortable with maybe creating them on their own. And of course, we've added the ability to schedule the job throttling. So maybe during the day you want to throttle it down to 10%, and at night go back up to 100% or 50%. And then we have additional connectors to other systems. So I think we're at 55 plus connectors right now. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Mark so he can do the version recap.
Okay, to quickly recap the version 3 capabilities. So version 3 highlights, our new focus on records management, e-discovery at the user interface level. Again, we've been doing this for many years. We have many customers that are actually using this already. We are given our federation platform. This is a very seamless way of doing governance in place or manage in place of your documents across all these systems. The enhanced user experience so that we can better target our user that we want, which is the business analyst. And then, of course, we always add more connectors all the time. And some of these come from our roadmap, and some of these come from customers or partners asking for different connectors. And this leads us into a future, and I'll hand this off to Stanley Arnold, our CTO, who will talk about what's coming up in the next year.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So for our roadmap, we've broken it up into 4 main categories. AI, DM, document management, productivity, and usability. With AI, we currently offer several solutions for consuming SaaS-based services. Those are available now in version 3, and those include products like IBM Watson or Amazon Rekognition in order to enrich the data that we're processing with Simflofy. In the next version and throughout the year, we'll be working on adding some more on-premise options to help consumers lower costs, to address customers that are looking for more data privacy, and really to better accommodate secured or otherwise esoteric environments. With document management, we're looking at ways to continuously improve and develop our native document management solution. That is content that is stored in and managed by Simflofy. So for 3.0 and in future releases of 3, we're looking to include better automation by adding a task-based pipeline and even a full workflow engine in the future. In order to enhance the productivity of Simflofy, we're also looking at adding additional connectors, as always. With version 3, we have an Outlook add-on coming, and this will allow users in Outlook to natively create records and documents in Simflofy from Outlook. We're also adding a Microsoft Teams connector so we can consume content that's shared through Teams. And we'll be creating a file system monitoring connector, which will give administrators the option to watch and react to changes on a file system. Other connectors we have coming through the pipe, N4, cloud-based ERP, HubSpot, Confluence, and Google Cloud Storage, just to name a few. In terms of usability, what we're really hoping to do is revamp our dashboard to better connect users with the status of federation and migration efforts. We really want to help analysts and users visualize how Simflofy is being leveraged within their organization. We also envision a more personalized experience where users see their jobs and jobs related to their team. And of course, as always, we're always adding new widgets and more features and options to improve the Federation user experience. So that kind of covers it. I'll hand it back to you, Dave.
Stanley, and of course, Mark and Tara before that. Thank you so much for that detailed insight into exactly what people are getting with Simflofy v3 and what they will be getting in future versions too. Great stuff there. Thank you all. But now on to the part of the webinar that I really like. It's Q&A time. And we've had a number of great questions coming in from our audience today. I'm going to do my best to get through as many as I possibly can in the time that we've got left. But again, any that we don't get around to, we will answer by email as soon as we can. So let's get things kicked off. And Mark, let's start with you. First question is asking about the systems that Simflofy can connect into. And it specifically asks whether SharePoint 365 is an option, but also asks whether the records management functionality that we talked about can be applied to SharePoint also.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, we can connect to SharePoint Office 360 or SharePoint 365. We can do in-place records management with Office 365, but we can also do it with the whole Office 365, right? So it's not just SharePoint, it's Exchange, it can be OneDrive, it can be Teams, right? So it can be any of these different systems that Microsoft supports. It could be any of the SharePoint stuff that's on premise as well. So it doesn't have to be the online version. It could be if you have it installed in Azure or on premise, we can manage that as well. And then again, we have 55 plus connectors, and we're always building new connectors. So it's not just Microsoft stuff. It's everybody else's stuff out there too.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. And Mark, actually staying with you, next question is related, I guess, to all of those connectors that we talked about. Is Simflofy looking to replace those 4 or 5 systems that I currently use to store content, or is it just looking to be an access point to them?
Yeah, that's another good question. So we don't we're super flexible, right? We're not one of these tools that comes in and says migrate everything to our repo and then everything will be great, right? We try to fill gaps. We try to bring value to the systems you already have. So again, not every system has records and retention management, and so especially in a federated way. So we try to bring that control across all your enterprise systems. Some of those are content management systems. Most of those probably aren't. Email, right? File systems are certainly not. Databases. So we try to bring those controls there to add value, to add functionality to these different systems, and fill gaps in your enterprise content management plan, right? That's our plan. That's our goal. So if you want to migrate, you can, but it's an option. It's not something that we require. Again, we provide the tooling, we provide the platform to do that in a nice, easy way where business analysts can drive those as opposed to developers. So it just makes that a lot more scalable from your side. But it's certainly not a requirement from our side. So again, that's what one of the nice things about Federation is we can add value on top of the platforms we're federating without having to do any kind of migration, unless, like I said, unless you want to get off that legacy system.
All right, makes perfect sense. Thank you. Stanley, one for you, I think. And I think actually this question probably came in before you answered it, but let's answer it just to be brutally clear. So someone's asking whether Simflofy have any plans to build a Microsoft Outlook integration that allows people to declare emails as records specifically.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is actually already on our roadmap, and we'll be releasing sometime this year a fully integrated Outlook plugin that will allow customers to declare records and add content to Simflofy without having to leave their email environment. So yes, that is on our roadmap, and that should be available within the year.
Fantastic. And Stanley, staying with you, if we can do, you talked about AI as a future area of development. Can you give us an idea of when some of those first AI-enabled features might be available in Simflofy and what those are going to look like?
Yeah. So we actually have several options available now with the version 3.0 release. Again, those include mostly SaaS offerings. Consuming images and pulling out metadata from images. Those are all available now. So for version 3.1, we're looking at adding some additional on-premise OCR and AI integrations like Tesseract. That way, with some clients, that way we have options available for customers who would rather avoid using the SaaS-based offering.
All right, makes sense. Thank you. And we've got just time for one more question today. Like I say, we've had so many coming in. We will get to all of the questions that have come through via email that we haven't had time to answer today. But Mark, one final one for you, if we may. The question's coming from me, actually. How can someone wanting to get a closer look at Simflofy move things forward? What do they need to do? How do they take a closer look?
Yeah, so we have several options for doing to evaluate Simflofy. So the first one is obviously you have to contact us first so we can get connected with you. And so just go to our website and just fill in one of the contact forms and tell us you want to evaluate Simflofy. So the first way we can do this is we have a demo server online that you can just go and play with. It's pre-set up with a bunch of connectors. We can give you Simflofy's fully multi-tenant, so we can give you a tenant that creates a brand new database under the cover, so it's fully secure. And then you can, play around with Simflofy. You can add your own, configure your own connectors, stuff like that. The other way is we can do an evaluation license agreement, and then you can get a copy of Simflofy with a license that's maybe 2-3 months long, and then you can play with it in your own environment with your own systems. So we're fine with either way. We do both. But you just have to reach out to us, and we'll help you out.
Fantastic. Lots of options. Thank you, Mark. So unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. And Tara, really sorry that we didn't manage to find a question for you, but I know you'll be on hand to talk to people as and when they reach out for that demo, as Mark suggested they can do just now. And with that, we're at the end of this webinar. Thank you, Mark, Tara, and Stanley, so much for your presentations and your answers in the Q&A. And thank you all for attending today. You will be receiving a link of the recording of today's session via email, and you can find more information about Simflofy via the Simflofy website at www.simflofy.com/v3. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, goodbye from all of us.